on YouTube? Stickasaurus here, and gonna try something new here. I'm getting a lot of questions on Instagram and stuff, so I'm gonna try to do a video. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I got enough helmets that I can probably make a bunch, so we're gonna let's go. Today, we're gonna work on finishing this Samurai Red helmet. Okay, this is, well, I guess I finished last week. It's straight off the printer. Just took off the supports with my hand. I didn't get in and clean up any of the little bits left around the eyes here. I got some footage of the back printing, but I didn't get any of the front. I wasn't planning on doing this, but go through all the steps that I go through to go from a raw print to, there's a bird in here. Oh boy. It flew out. Sorry about that. From a raw print to a finished helmet. At first, I'm assuming you gotten to this point here. If you didn't, I can make another video about that. Where to get files. I've done it all kinds of ways. I've made my own. I've taken Peppercorn files and made them into helmets. You can get commissioned helmets and stuff. There's a lot you can do, but with the raw helmets, the way I print them, I don't do any supports on the chin, so the chins come out looking pretty rough. I Bondo these. You could Bondo them a lot better than I do. I usually do one pass, get them kind of smooth, and there's usually some holes and stuff you can fill in with filler putty or whatever you want to use. Some people use wood filler. I tried it. It absorbs the paint weird, so I never really had any much luck with it. Bondo's the way to go. It's really not that bad. It's kind of intimidating at first, but once you do it a bunch of times, it's not a big deal. So we'll go through that. We'll Bondo the chin. Then we'll do a quick 120 grit sand on this thing the whole way around. I'll go through and clean up some of the leftover little bits from the supports, or where there weren't supports, and we got some strands. I don't know if you can see that really well, but what I figure is I print these about draft quality, and I think they turn out pretty nice. I mean, you'll get some inconsistencies where you get some layer that delaminate there, but other than that, you're gonna do all the finishing work anyway. And printing them at a lower layer light, yeah, maybe they'll look a little better. You might, but you're still gonna be your layer lines no matter what. That's just the nature of FDM prints like this. So what I figure is I'm gonna finish it anyway. I'm gonna sand it, Bondo it. I don't Bondo the whole thing. Some people do, and they look fantastic. But I don't know if it's worth the extra work sometimes. Honestly, a really good clear coat is probably gonna do more for you than Bondoing the whole thing. But you can do you. But we'll do that. We'll hit it with a 120 grit, rough up the surface, put some filler primer on it, sand it again with I do 220. Another kind of filler primer. We'll do some wet sanding, and we'll get into masking and all that. But let's get started on the Bondo of the chin. Okay, so if you put supports on your chin, you won't have to do this, but since I don't, because I think it doesn't really matter, it uses a lot less plastic, and they're not really that bad. I've done a few where I didn't Bondo the chins, and you can get away with it. They don't look the best. My Magnum Defender I didn't Bondo the chin. I thought it looked fine. Sometimes they come out looking fine, and you don't have to worry about it. But I'm gonna Bondo this chin here. If you never use Bondo, read the instructions. Make sure you do it outside, because it's not really good to breathe in. We're just doing a small amount here, so nothing too crazy. Now you can use Bondo, Some people use wood filler. I've never had much luck with that. It should be good enough. But you're welcome to try whatever you want. I can't promise it will work, but I've also used some of this Bondo glazing spot putty. This works okay. I usually use this to fill in holes more than to actually do any build up. But that'll work as well. Oh, why is that all wrong? It's shaking. That's probably way too much hardener for that little amount. So we do not have a lot of time. Make sure you get a uniform color. It's most important. Now you can use like plastic spreaders, or I don't know what they're called, squeegees kinda. I never have much luck with A, getting it off when it's done, and B, making it smooth. I've always had better luck with just using popsicle sticks or paint sticks if you have them. You don't really want to get the stuff on your hands. It'll get sticky, and then if you touch literally anything, it's going to leave some residue on it. So word for advice from past mistakes, don't touch anything get painted after you do this. If you get any on your fingers, it will leave fingerprints, and it's just disappointing. But I just load up a popsicle stick here, throw it on, and you just want to push it in. I don't know if you can see that, but again, this is just what I do. Some people Bondo the whole helmet, and it's a legitimate thing, and you probably will 100% get a nicer finish than I will. With the sand a lot more, I can guarantee that, but it's whatever you're willing to do. If I was doing these as a commission or for someone else, I'd probably Bondo a good bit of the helmet. Not all of it needs Bondoed, of course, but if I was going for a pristine finish, I definitely would. But he looks pretty good. So that's all you want to do. The smoother you get it now, the less sanding you'll have to do later. And this part's easy. The sanding can be difficult. Bondo's honestly not that bad as sand if you start with a low grit and work yourself up. And then we'll grate this first before we start, because if you don't grate it, you got to get this top layer off, or else it'll gum up your sandpaper and just be a mess. But yep, that's all you do. And then just let it dry a little bit till it's tacky but not solid, and then we'll start grating it. Okay, so it's been about a half hour. Your Bondo should be hard but kind of tacky. Next step, to make sanding easier, you're going to want to get one of these. 100% honest with you, not positive what it is. It's like a grater of some sort. I don't know. My father did auto body work, so he had these already. But what you're going to want to do is, you see this, how it's flesh colored? You want to grind or grate most of this away so it gets be like color of salmon and not tacky, because the tacky stuff will gum up your sandpaper and you'll be there forever. So I go like this. I do it over a trash can like I'm doing, because it makes a mess. So be careful, because you will catch your finger one time. But you see the difference there? I hope you could see it, but this isn't tacky where we grated away, but this still is. So you just want to do that until it's about uniform all the way around. And see, I got my knuckle a little bit there, but that's okay. Okay, see, that should be good for now. What you mainly want to do is rough it up, get rid of that tacky texture, and take away most of the high spots. It'll just make sanding a lot quicker for you. And don't cut yourself like I did. Okay, so after we get the Bondo grated off, next we're going to start sanding. Make sure you're well ventilated. You should probably wear a mask, especially when you're doing the Bondo, for sure. I like to start with 80 grit sandpaper. One of these blocks, about due for a new piece, but there's still some here for this little bit. We should be okay. And what you want to do is knock this down the best you can, and then we're going to come back in with 120 grit and go over the whole thing. All right, now when it's time to sand the whole helmet, I like to use one of these variable speed sanders here. Just 120 grit Prad, nothing's fancy. I got a 100 pack off Amazon of these for 20 bucks, and they do some nice work. You can certainly do this by hand. I don't suggest it. You're gonna be there a while, but that's entirely up to you. We're just gonna get this a little roughed up before we start putting some filler primer on it. So here we go. You're not looking to make it smooth or anything. All this does is take down some of the high spots you can't really tell, roughs it up so the primer adheres better. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't stress about it, honestly. And also be careful. First off, it's plastic, so if you stay in one spot too long, it's gonna heat up because of the friction, and you will melt it. So there's that. Also, some of them, if you print them without a visor, you can print ones with visors. You can have them drill them out like stunt casts if you want, or you can cut out the visors. Whatever you can find. There's a lot of different models out there. But sometimes there's not a lot of plastic holding these together when there's no visor. Like my Mighty Morphin Blue, there's about an inch of plastic here on both sides, holding the top to the bottom. And if you drop it, it's probably gonna split there. Once you get the visor in, that really strengthens it. But until then, be careful. So after you get the front done, roughed up, make sure you do the back. I'm gonna do that here. And then we'll move on to the primer. Okay, before you primer, you wanna make sure you blow these off with either compressed air or maybe wash them if you don't have access to it, but you wanna get any bits left over, especially where the Bondo was. If not, it's just gonna stick under your paint and you're just gonna have to sand more. And do the back. Okay, for the primer, you're going to want to use filler primer. This is the kind I always use. There are others out there. I've tried automotive primer before, but I always get paint lifting issues. So this has been what I've been using. The first coat, you don't have to go too heavy. It's not as important, especially if you miss a couple spots. After we sand it the second time, the second primer coat is when you really want to get good. Make sure you shake it up real good. I already did a good bit off camera here, but this stuff's kind of thick when it comes out, so it's hard to get large areas with it. And again, make sure you got some doors open or something. All right, there's your first coat of primer. Looks pretty good. It's even better on camera, but just let it dry. The longer you let it dry, the easier the next sanding part's gonna be, or else it's gonna gum up your sandpaper pretty good. So I probably won't get to these this today. Probably next week, so it should be good to go. But next, we're gonna sand with some 220. All right, these are dry. They've been sitting for a week, so they're definitely dry. Front and back. And we're gonna hit them with some 240 sandpaper. I usually use 220, but I bought a bunch of these 240 pads off Amazon. They gum up pretty quick, but they were really cheap. I got a bunch of them, so I'm gonna hit this with 240, and then we're gonna prime it again. So that's about what you're looking for. Just want to make sure it's smooth. Usually, you'll start seeing the color of the filament underneath it, but since this was gray on gray is kind of hard to tell, but like you could see where the Bondo was. You want to get it down that far and give you a better finish in the end. But I'm gonna do this, do the back of this one, and then we'll move on to another coat of filler primer. Before I put another coat of primer on here, I'm going to blow off all the sanding dust. If not, it's going to get under your paint, leave all these little pimples kind of around it, and you'll just have to sand more. So it's really important you do this. Okay, with this coat, you want to make sure you get it nice and even, because when we wet sand it, we're essentially just sanding the paint, smoothing it down. So anywhere you don't, you're going to notice. And it's also easier in the long run, but Alright, so you're going to want to let that dry, and then we'll move on to wet sanding. Okay, our Red Samurai is dry after that last coat of filler primer. Now we're going to do some wet sand with some 400 grit. And here's the point where you can go as far as you want to go. I've got tape on here somehow. I find the 400 grit, and then as long as you paint it and top coat it, you're more than fine. Some people go up to like 800. That's entirely up to you and what you're willing to put your work into, but I found that just 400 is fine. If there's a spot you really want to work on, maybe 600, but this is usually more than enough, and you'll really feel, I don't know, happy about it when it's all nice and smooth. But All right, that's pretty smooth. I'm happy with it. What you're gonna wanna do is rinse this off, get all the loose bits of paint, or else they're gonna show up under your paint layer. So once you finish wet sanding, go rinse it off, let it dry completely, and then we'll move on to paint.